Hello and welcome to another episode of My Favourite Game from the Honest Football Podcast.
So, on the show this week, we've got Colin from Half Half Scarves Podcast. Colin and I have a great chat about, he's a Chelsea fan. We talk a bit about that at the beginning. We actually talk a lot about his podcast, which is a fantastic one. If you haven't listened to it, it really is quite an informal sort of thing that really, I think, a lot of people can relate to. It's conversations you'd hear in the stands and terraces of every football ground, in every pub, etc. It's just a really good podcast to listen to. So if you haven't already, give them a follow and check them out and listen to them. You can find out where during the episode. And then we also talk about Colin's favourite ever football match. And I won't ruin anything about it. It's actually an incredibly famous football match, but at the same time one that gets forgotten about quite quickly. So it's a brilliant game. It's a brilliant experience, and he managed to watch it from such a unique position, and I'm just really excited for you to hear it. So yeah, just do two things. Firstly, make sure you listen to this, and then as soon as you've done that, start following Half Half Scarves Podcast, and then listen to theirs. You can backdate their catalogue and all of that. Enjoy.
And don't forget, if you'd like to be part of this favourite game series, just give us a message at Honest Football 3.
So it is a great pleasure of mine to introduce Colin French of the Half Half Scarves Podcast. Colin, you're on today, so you're going to talk to us about your favourite ever football match. So thanks for coming on. Appreciate you being here.
No worries. Thank you for having me on, Charlie.
So, Colin, just tell us a little bit about yourself, sort of from a football perspective before we start. So, we'll hear about your favourite game and obviously your podcast a bit later on. But sort of like what team do you support, etc. You sort of maybe even the way you got into footballing, if that makes sense. So, yeah, anything of that sort, really.
Yeah, well, I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm a season ticket holder there. I got into football probably the same as most people did when I was a kid. Just watching it, playing, little league football, then on to Sunday league football. It was just always a thing. And, like most people, it's been that way ever since.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so obviously being a Chelsea fan, growing up, sort of different times really, hasn't there? Obviously the pre, I don't really like the cliche, the way people always have this pre-Abramovich sort of thing. There was Chelsea was still a fairly successful team before all of that, FA Cup finalists, quite late on, weren't they, in the 90s and stuff. So, I think it's, I don't like the way that there's almost a pre and post Abramovich. Obviously he's had an impact, but I don't know what your thoughts are being a sort of an actual Chelsea fan on that, but.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, Chelsea weren't very successful, but they kind of always had that glamour sort of feel about them. It was Kerry Dixon. I like Kerry Dixon, but they weren't particularly successful. But then you're right. You go on to the era when it probably started when Glenn Hoddle took over. Everything started to change a little bit. He kind of took control of football and the fitness and stuff like that. And we saw players like Ruud Gullit and Zola turn up. And when we won that FA Cup, things did start to change. We were kind of like a team that weren't challenging, but we were sort of there or thereabouts, if that makes sense. And then, when Abramovich turned up, obviously it went the extra mile. Yeah,
no, exactly. And I think obviously there has been that difference. But I think, to be honest, Chelsea now, I suppose, are obviously going through that transition, aren't they, with, the whole transfer ban and all of that. I mean, what do you think in terms of like Lampard and the future? Do you sort of see much changing from what it is now, or do you think they're going to make that sort of steady? Because he's made quite a steady start, really, hasn't he, in that sense?
Yeah, I'm very excited for it because I think Lampard probably would always have managed Chelsea at some point, but the transfer ban, as it's happened sooner than it would have done. But it's kind of like a blessing in disguise because last season under Sarri, it was awful, right? And I'm saying that we finished third and won the Europa League. But it was a terrible season. It was terrible football to watch. So this change, we're playing good football now. I'm not under no illusion that it's still a fight for like top 4, top 6 will be a result still. But the actual football change. So I think it's going to change like the mentality back within the club.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, to be honest, I think, people who maybe read your newspaper or see it on Match of the Day, they probably get a false impression. I think when you're a season ticket holder, I used to be one at West Ham, for example, which is obviously nowhere near as glamorous as Chelsea. But, you see the ins and outs of it. And I think sometimes you get a false impression of what's going on. So, from an outsider's perspective, that under Sarri, like you say, if you looked at it, Europa League champions and all of that, the actual reality is that if you're watching that style of football week in, week out, it is a grind, isn't it? It's actually quite soul-destroying sometimes, even if you do pick up a result, that the way you've done it almost. And I think only real sort of proper season ticket holders or proper fans, sorry, would understand that a bit more, don't they? That you can still be frustrated when you're successful, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, we had a little bit of it under Mourinho, maybe the second time, and maybe actually the first time, but his second season. But when it's boring football, and we pay a lot of money to go and watch Premier League football, and you do want to be entertained. Obviously, the result is probably the most important thing, but you still want to watch your team play, and you still want to watch them sort of fight a bit. But Sarri, it was very negative, sort of just rubbish football, really, and I didn't want to go through another season of that. So when they announced he was going and Lampard was coming in, obviously we're all made up, aren't we? And so far it's working. We don't know, we've still got a long way to go. So, there's nothing's won yet, but it's been nice to watch.
Yeah, and I think even from a neutral perspective, such as myself in that sense, I think it is a lot better. I think everyone's a lot more. I think Chelsea have become a bit more acceptable to other fans in a sense. I think everyone's always held Lampard in high regard. So whatever he does there, he's gonna do well. And there's a bit of longevity there with them, isn't there, in that sense? So yeah. But moving on, Colin, to your podcast, which is, I love the name of it, Half and Half Scarves Podcast. Do you want to tell us a bit about sort of where that started from, the name of it, and all of that? Because it's quite a good story to tell here, isn't there, with your sort of your podcast and
that. Well, really, all it is it's me and three other mates. Like we've known each other a long time, and like a lot of mates who all watch football, we've got a WhatsApp group. And it's quite funny. It can teeter on the edge a little bit, but there's a lot going on it. And I had a thought for a long time, we should try a podcast, because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I always have done. But I mentioned it a few times, and nothing really happened. And then one day, one of our friends, Adam, he sort of grabbed it and said, "Yeah, let's just do it." And he was the one who worked out how we record, how we edit, how we can release it. It was one of our mates, Adam, that kind of picked it up and ran with it. He worked out how we record it, how you edit it, how you get it out there, all the logistics of it. So we just did it, really. We just recorded some stuff, put it out there. They don't exist anymore not because they're rubbish, where they are rubbish, but more because people were going back to them the first time round, and I wouldn't have carried on listening to a podcast that sounded like that.
I know what you mean, actually. They do say, didn't they, you should measure your latest episode against your first one, just to see, like a year or something like that, just to see the difference and the progress you've made when you're doing a podcast. So yeah, I get what you mean with that, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't delete them because sales, thought, oh, these are rubbish, or I'm ashamed of them or anything. It was just every time we kind of had a spike in listeners, they would go into the first ones first. So we sort of moved those on. But yeah, Adam, he moved on to a different podcast, an NFL one, 5 Yard Rush, which he's done really well with. So it's just four of us now. It's me, it's Kieran, Dave, and Drew. So we're just four mates. We just meet up once a week on a Monday night, and we talk about the week's football, anything that's happened. Look, the language isn't always great, but you're literally just listening to the sort of conversation we'd have in a pub, I suppose, is the best way to put it.
Do you know what? I was going to say the exact same thing. I think that's what I love about listening to yours, is that it's a lot more real, and it is the exact same conversation you'll probably hear all over the pubs of England United Kingdom, when people are talking about football. And I think that's actually quite refreshing. That's what you want to hear, so I completely get that. I was about to say that's the best way I would sum your podcast up, is that it is real conversations that you would just hear in the pub or in the stands of a football ground. And actually, I think that's the best way of that's what people want to hear. That's what real football fans want to hear, in my opinion, anyway. So yeah, sorry. So obviously the bit that's quite intriguing about your podcast, Colin, is the name of it. Is there sort of a story behind that? Because one of our hosts, Craig, between me and you and whoever's listening, he cannot stand Half and Half Scarves. So I don't know, is it an ironic thing, or are you a genuine fan of them, basically?
No, can't stand the things. I think they're the scourge of modern football. Well, along with VAR now. But yeah, they're the scourge of modern football for me. Get them in the bin. It was just really, look, when we started it, we were just trying to think of a name so we could release the first podcast. And there was a few things that went around. I think at one point we were considering being called You've Got No Fans. And I can't remember who come up with it, but someone suggested Half and Half Scarves because of our mutual dislike. And that's it, really. It just come from there. We just went with that.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. No, I think it's really good in that sense. I think it's quite, it stands out as well, doesn't it? So yeah. So I think what sort of things, I know you mentioned, sorry, very briefly about, that you talk about things that happen over the weekend, but, I know, for example, we've sent in a question. You have like a bit of a Q&A part as well. So what sort of structure do you have on your podcast in that sense? If we were to listen to a generic sort of episode, what sort of format does it follow, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so like we've been doing it for just over a year. So over the last year, like most podcasts or anything creative, I think, it's evolved to different things. We've tried different things. Some things don't work. Some things sort of just naturally do. So they just work. Our actual structure is just, we'll round up the Premier League. We'll talk about that. We have, because Kieran's a Fulham fan and obviously they got relegated. Now we have a bit of a championship roundup as well.
Right. Yeah.
We've got we've got a team in a podcast, which is the Farley Rovers Reserves. So we catch up with them every week. And here's a little spoiler for next week's. Their game at the weekend was abandoned and there had to be police presence. So wait for that story.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Probably by the time this goes out this week, that'd have already gone out on your one as well. But I'm sure it'd be, that'd be quite interesting to hear about that, actually.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The story throughout this club, because of one of our friends is the manager, is incredibly crazy. And you're right, we have a question section which has kind of blown up a bit since we started it, and we don't ask specifically for football questions because who wants to listen to us talk about football for a bit and then answer questions about it? Like, we don't know what we're talking about, do we? So there's no point in asking us anything. So we get random questions about about anything. Usually they're quite funny.
Yeah, I remember we sent in one about like a chocolate bar, a new flavour that come out. And to be fair, you debated that for a good couple of minutes. So I think, like you say, it literally is anything, isn't it, that you can sort of, that you can answer about, which is really good.
Yeah, that was that mint dime bar, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was disgusting. Honestly, it was awful. I don't know why anyone thought that needed a mint flavour to it. But anyway, sorry, we're taking over on that. I'm getting on my soapbox again about that thing. But yeah, so anyone can send in anything they want, really, and you'll pretty much answer it. Is that a fair description of it?
Yeah. Well, within, obviously within reason. But, we'll answer it. It just gives us a chance to talk about something a bit different. And, I feel like our personalities probably come out a bit more. And after that, we have a winner and loser each week. And that's it. That's the whole thing round up. They're generally about an hour long.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. No, that sounds fantastic. So obviously you mentioned earlier where you can find what sort of plans have you got for the future? Is it a bit more of the same, or I know I've seen your sort of podcast has been doing a bit of sponsoring and stuff as well, isn't it? And, linked to lots of other little bit sort of projects. So what's the sort of plans for the future with that, if that makes sense?
No, nothing really. I'm quite happy to work with anyone else. Obviously we all kind of, have got to know each other through the Soccer Swap fan portal. So at the moment we sponsor the CM0102 Super League blog. And I know you had Stephen on your other episode, which is very good. I enjoyed that. And tonight, this Sunday, I'm actually on the Super League tonight live doing the commentating. So
okay, very good. Yeah,
they're not going to get anything useful out of me, no stats or anything. I'll just talk rubbish. But we're happy to do things with anyone. Like we've done podcasts, say, with Stephen for the Super League, with the False Libero when his book came out. We're involved with some of the counter-attack stuff in terms of we've done a podcast for that game. We played it. We've got a prototype and stuff. Anyone that's got anything that they, because what I like about this whole scene is there's all these people that are creating something that's away from, mainstream media, and it doesn't get any attention because it's not, in the mainstream, because there's not a lot of money behind it. But there's some fantastic stuff out there, some really good content creators.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it is, I think what I've learned recently actually is, to be honest, I think when we first started our podcast, we were slightly scared of competition. But actually, when I say competition, what I mean is other podcasts sort of stealing viewers, etc. But actually, I think what I've noticed recently is actually we're all in the same boat. We're all actually help each other out, which I think is fantastic. Even just, for example, you coming on this, actually it is, there's as you know, we're in a group of about 50 other content creators, as you call it. And actually it is all of us trying to push each other, give yourself, a bit of a lift up, really, isn't it? So I think that it's a lot more of a community than what I realised to be honest.
Yeah, someone's got questions, or they're stuck with something. Someone will generally put their hands up and help them out.
Mm.
And I know what you're saying about the kind of, you've got your own podcast and you want people to listen to you, maybe not other people. But I think the reality is, in the situation we're in, we're never going to have these amazing sort of download figures.
Yeah.
But people will listen to more than one football podcast if they like it.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. No, I think that's completely true. I think, yeah, we sort of, once we got into it quite quickly, we realised, I think we ended up, like you say, with your sort of mentality there. But I think initially when we sort of started, we were a bit like, oh no. I think you do maybe feel like that, don't you? That you can change the world with your podcast. And it's obviously, unless you've got Gary Neville on there, it's probably not going to happen, is it, to be fair? So.
No, that's right. And like, I don't know about yourself, Charlie, but I'm not trained in audio engineering. I've had to learn how to edit and to produce it and stuff as I've gone along. So that having that kind of community with Soccer Swap and other accounts on Twitter, that's been quite valuable because I've been able to ask questions.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, yeah, we're completely the same boat as yourselves. It is just, to be honest, I recently sent a message to my to the other two lads who do it, and without going into too much detail, sort of outside of all of this, I probably haven't had the greatest run in terms of things that have happened. And actually, one of the saving things is just meeting my sort of mates on the Friday night when we record it. And it's just the little value of stuff like that almost, isn't it? That whether anyone listens to it or not, in some ways, actually just the community that has come off the back of doing these things, it is so valuable, isn't it? I think in that sense.
Yeah, well, you're right when you talk about people listening, because like say we're four mates that have known each other a long time, but we don't really see each other very often. Like Kieran don't live too far from me, so I can see him. Drew's moved away a little bit, and Dave, he lives all the way up in Rochdale. A few weeks ago, I drove up to see him, and I hadn't seen him for 5 years. But it's a great opportunity for us. We meet up, albeit remotely, but we meet up every Monday and talk about football.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing I think we do it for, really.
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely. I think you've summed up very, very well, sort of why everyone gets into this sort of thing, really, and I think that the value of it is fantastic. But we'll move on, Colin, to the real reason that you're here, which is to talk about your favourite ever football match. So if you just sort of set the scene for us, like obviously tell us about the game, but maybe before the match, post match, all of that. So just anything that sort of stood out for you, really.
Right. So look, I haven't picked a Chelsea game here.
Okay, right.
And there's a lot of games I could have picked.
Yeah, go on. Give us a few then maybe that you could have, gone for.
When we won Premier Leagues, domestic trophies, I watched them win the Champions League. There's plenty of games. There's games when I first started going. I was sort of 16, 17 when I started going. But if I was talking about football and like the sheer joy and surprise that football can give you, which is in my head, I'm imagining I'm talking to someone that they maybe don't watch a lot of football or something. So I'm trying to express that emotion. And the game I've chosen is from 1989, and it's Sutton United versus Coventry in the FA Cup third round.
That's brilliant. Yeah, go on.
To set the scene for anyone that isn't aware of this, because it's quite a famous game. Every year when the FA Cup comes round, usually it's there's montages of it played. There's definitely reference to it. Giant killings. That Coventry were top of League One at the time. So they're one of the best teams in the country. Yeah. They're players like David Speedy, Cyril Regis, Ryan Kilcline, Steve Ogrizovic. They were a big team. I think they won the FA Cup like 2 years before or something like that.
Yeah, I think it wasn't. Yeah, they had that, and then 3 years before that, they took Spurs, didn't they, to replay and things. So yeah, you're right. I suppose through the 80s, Coventry were a well drilled team, weren't they? So yeah, go on.
Yeah. So this was a massive tie. Look, Sutton were in the GM Vauxhall Conference at the time. They're in the National League now, but they're in the Vauxhall Conference. The season before, Sutton United, they'd taken Middlesbrough to a replay in the third round, and they got beaten in extra time. So there was a bit of a buzz, but for the FA Cup, like I grew up not far from where Sutton's ground is, Gander Green Lane, and like as an adult now, I live even closer. I live like just around the corner.
Right.
But I was a ball boy at Sutton, and I've done that for a couple of years because my dad used to go down and watch them quite a lot. So it was just something that kind of happened. Something to do at the weekend, really. You got paid in like cans of Coke and Mars bars. So like I was like sugar rich. I was quite happy about it. But I think I was 10 when this game when this game was played.
Right, okay,
But generally, it's non-league football. Generally, watching Sutton, from my point of view, it wasn't like the most scintillating experience. There weren't many fans there. The football was pretty poor. So there was never really too much of a buzz. But the day of this game, I remember the buzz everywhere.
Really?
Like that, you get that crackling energy in the air.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Like Sutton's, it's a small town. It's a little London borough. It's not quite close enough to London to be South London, but it's not quite far enough to be like proper Surrey. It's in a weird place.
Yeah, sort of no man's land almost, isn't it, in that sense?
Yeah, so not much really happens there. Like the only other thing I can think of is they filmed an episode of Mr. Bean in the Alders once.
Right.
Nothing else exciting ever happened.
No, that's what it's known for. Because I think I don't know if it was then, but just before that, even if you won the conference, you weren't guaranteed to get in the Football League back then, were you? Like, did you have to get voted up or something like that?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So I don't know if it was the same then. So I think, like you say, I suppose that shows the gap was even bigger then between, someone who was in the team that was in the conference and obviously a Football League team, so like Coventry and Sutton. So you were saying, yeah, go on, so Sutton this was a massive day for them then, was it, in that sense?
Yeah, you got flags, Sutton flags everywhere. Everywhere you went that day on the way up to the game, it's completely sold out. I don't think. Well, probably the only time since then it's ever sold out is they had Arsenal a few years ago in the FA Cup.
That's right, and that fella got eating a pie and stuff, wasn't he? There was a whole thing around now and then. So.
Yeah, he was trying to earn a couple of quid and he got sacked.
You can't blame him, can you?
But it's a big day. As a 10-year-old kid, there's TV crews at the grounds. It's like mind-blowing sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the state of the pitch, if you go back and watch any of the videos, they're all on YouTube. There was like sand all over the pitch, different time. Really, I suppose. But yeah,
it just shows the gap, doesn't it? Sorry, you were just saying earlier, like it just shows you how difference. You go to a lot of National League grounds now and they're not far off of, League One or League Two grounds here, are they? So back then, I suppose the gap was even bigger, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. So the Coventry players, I'm sure they weren't all that happy about playing on that surface, but
no,
that's the way it is. But
it's sort of a bit of a leveler, isn't it? So
well, yeah. But I mean, like everyone's thinking, well, Sutton are going to get smashed here, but we'll have a nice day out and we get to watch Speedy and Cyril Regis.
Yeah.
It's all good. But say this game, I can't really remember too many details myself, even though I was there. I was standing off the pitch. I was ball boy.
Sort of working, weren't you? I suppose, to be fair. So it is.
Yeah, I think I was just. I think my little mind was just blown by the whole thing. But
yeah,
the game kicks off. I mean, it is truly a different time. I hadn't until I watched a video the other day on YouTube of it. The Sutton United manager was puffing on a pipe throughout the entire game, just sat in the dugout with a pipe.
That's the thing. But that's what makes it brilliant, isn't it? That's what in some ways, that's what's missing from football nowadays. Almost is that character, isn't it? To it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely a character. You wouldn't see anything like that now, but it just made me laugh when I saw it. How times have changed. But the game's kicked off. It's going all right actually, and then Sutton score. The captain Tony Raines, he scores from a header. So you can't believe, it's pandemonium. Your brain's exploding. It just scored against Coventry, and it was 1-0 at half time too. So it's all buzzing in the ground and everything. And down, obviously, as ball boys, we went down near the changing room, so you could feel that kind of energy around there. Then Coventry, they equalised in the second half, and you think, oh well, we've had a good run. We've had our money's worth. And then 7 minutes after Coventry score, a local bricklayer called Matthew Hanlon scores for Sutton.
Right.
He lives in Sutton. He builds out, he puts bricks down in Sutton, and he's just scored for Sutton against Coventry.
That's
and it's
incredible,
the goal
isn't it?
And they won the game with that goal. It knocked Coventry out of the FA Cup.
See, I don't know if you get those stories as much nowadays, but that is what the FA Cup's about, isn't it? I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it is those moments, isn't it, that you sort of live for in terms of probably more so then than now. But the FA Cup, that's everything it's about, isn't it? Like you say, a bricklayer who's local as well. I think there's sort of local community to do that. That's incredible, isn't it? Also, what would happen then? Obviously, it must have gone. Everyone must have gone bananas when it finished.
Yeah, well, I'd never experienced a pitch invasion before, so there was a pitch invasion. So you're like, getting carried away in all that, getting swept along with it. So there's TV cameras everywhere. There's people almost in tears. Like there was a general party vibe in Sutton for days after. And it's just that game, probably because of my age and things like that. I will never forget that game. And if anyone ever asks me about the spirit of football, why you like football, what is it that football can do, what are the emotions that football, it's just, 22 men kicking a ball about. I'd talk about that game because that's why people love it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I've sort of done a few of these now in terms of just recording from people, and actually, the most of the games that I've heard from people have been ones that have not just been an amazing game, but have actually had an impact on the community that it's in. And I think that that is another example, isn't it? Because I imagine the week after that game, like even just in and around the Sutton area, must have just been a completely different vibe for that week. So I think it's those moments you understand the power of football, isn't it? In that sense.
Yeah, so you're right, and it is a community thing. It's when you're talking about clubs like Sutton, like small non-league clubs, they're run by communities. They haven't got loads of employees. Most of the people work there for nothing, don't they?
Yeah,
they just
exactly.
Work there because they support the club. So when you had something that like what happens at Bury, that's not just a football club ceasing to exist anymore. That's a big community project that's ripped from that community.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's exactly the flip, I suppose, the negative side of, isn't it, for these moments we're talking about in these fantastic games. Like, it can rip the whole heart and soul out of a community as well, can't it? So, yeah, I think I completely get what you mean. I think it's fantastic you've chosen that game as well, just to highlight that, really. That I think, like you say, if you look at the bare sort of thing of it on paper, it doesn't stand out in the sense of it's just two football teams coming together for an afternoon to play football, but it is people's life, isn't it? And I think that's what I've learned just from doing this series, and we're only a few episodes in, that the community and the impact it has on everyone's life who lives near, who follows a football team. It's immeasurable, really, I think.
Yeah, like I as a fan of a Premier League club, I could get on my high horse and say, well, I go to all these games, or I do this and do that. But when you're talking about people that they give over a vast majority of their life to a club that doesn't, they're not going to see them win anything. They don't play attractive football. They're all part-time players, but they might be there 2, 3, 4 times a week helping out, doing that. They're all match day, selling programs, whatever it is. That's a completely different element of football support.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it is, to be honest though, Colin, just to quickly take it on to the next step really quickly, I even find sort of that's changed a bit in terms of the Premier League. And I think actually there is still that element of, if you're, like you are a Chelsea fan, or, in my sense, a West Ham fan before we moved to the Olympic Stadium, that the community is still a massive part of the club. And I do feel that there is that gets forgotten about. And there are, even at the top level of the game, there is still that hardcore nucleus of people who maybe live in the local area or have always gone and supported that club. And it's not just the corporate side of it, which seems to have taken over a bit in the Premier League. So I think even that spirit you're talking about with Sutton is still present, I think, in lots of Premier League clubs. It just probably doesn't get all of the spotlight it deserves, I suppose. I don't know what you think about that, but
no, I think actually you're right, because when you think about the Premier League clubs, obviously there's still people that make the fanzines for no money. There's still people that organise your flags, all the banners that are draped around the stadium. I don't know what it's like at West Ham, but we've got a group that organise all of the flags that go across the crowd before the match and stuff like that. So you're right. Yeah, there is people that probably are involved day in, day out, and yeah, perhaps that does get clouded by the money in TV.
Yeah, I just hope those sort of people and and proper fans like yourself just don't get forgotten about. I mean, I've told this story a few times, but when I had the season ticket at West Ham, there was one week we were playing Burnley midweek, and the lads who normally sit in front of me weren't there, and next thing these blokes in suits just come and sat down, and it was just these people who so I said to them, like, what's the crack, what are you doing here, etc. And they were like, oh yeah, we're just from the city, we're down sort of Canary Wharf, we're just entertaining a few people. And I thought, well, you come to the wrong place to get entertainment anyway. But do you know what I mean? And for me, the moment that happened, I was like, this isn't the club that I'd been supporting all my life before that, And I know you can talk about grounds, and we're going on a slightly different debate, but I just hope, I suppose for the future, I hope Premier League clubs and proper fans like me and you of Premier League clubs don't get lost and swallowed up in that kind of football fan that comes along. And there's nothing wrong with those people doing that, but I'd expect that at Man United or something, like not at West Ham against Burnley on a Tuesday evening. Do you know what I mean? Sort of that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I do absolutely. But then we'll go back to the name of the podcast, and I think the Half and Half Scarf is kind of the entry into that world for Premier League football. You know, like let's say for instance, like NFL with franchises. You know, if you go to a match like Kieran today was at in London for the NFL.
Oh, of course, yeah, they were doing that today, weren't they? Yeah,
yeah, for the Jags game, and I quite like it. I've gone along with him before. It's not, you know, it is a split support, and there's people who are wearing things from other clubs and things like that. And my worry with Half and Half Scarves is that the Premier League will kind of splinter into this kind of franchise thing where you say people are going, not necessarily because they go every week or this club they've supported for a long time, they're going because it's a Premier League game.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, and I think that's for the future. I don't know if maybe people like us need to have more of a voice. I don't know with that, but yeah, I do completely get what you mean. And the way it's going with the costing of it now, I don't, you know, I'm not prying for information, but having a season ticket at a Premier League club, it's not getting any cheaper anytime soon, to be honest, is it? So, you know, it's not.
Well, mind you, it ain't too bad at the London Stadium, is it?
No. To be honest, in that sense, well, you say that. I mean, the ticket I had wasn't that expensive, but I was so far away, Colin. I needed binoculars to see what was going on. It's an awful design of a football.
Right.
It's shocking. It is. I was right in the corner on the you know, you just can't. You're not close to the pitch in any part of it, so it is piss poor, to be honest. But anyway, that's.
Well, I mean, like I've got to give some credit to Roman Abramovich because my season ticket hasn't gone up for about 7 years now. I pay £7.50 for a season ticket at Chelsea in the Matthew Low, which I think is all right for a Premier League season ticket. When you work it out, it's about £40 a game, in it, give or take.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, no, that's not bad at all, actually, is it? When you think of it like that. No, I suppose I just hope it stays like that. Like, I'm not saying Abramovich personally.
Yeah.
But, you know, other Premier League clubs don't. I mean, take Arsenal on the flip side of it. You know, you've got to remortgage your house to go and watch a game there. So I think it is. It's not ideal, but no. Just to round it off, Colin, I really appreciate you coming on and doing that. And I've got to say, before I interviewed you, I did not expect to have that as your favourite ever football match. And actually, just the story behind it. I love the like you say, the fact that you were there and almost working there as well. But it was and the sort of impact it's had on the people around it at the time. So thank you very much. Just a quick reminder, really quickly, of where people can follow you and your podcast if off the back of this. So.
Yeah, well, you can find us at halfandhalfscarvespodcast.com. There's a player on there that's got all of the episodes on you can listen to. We're on Twitter at Half and Half Pods. We're on Facebook, all the social sort of stuff. Come over, get involved. There's a Facebook group. I don't know how you find it, but if you want to be in a group with some idiots like us, just, you know, request to join and we'll accept that.
Colin, top man. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate you doing that.
No worries, Charlie. Cheers for having me on.